Want the chaos at our airports to come down, yes or no? If you've had enough of long lines, if you want TSA workers to get paid, then vote yes on the motion I am bringing before the Senate today. It is unacceptable for workers and travelers in entire airports to get taken hostage in political games. But that's what the Republicans are doing. It is unacceptable to say we will only pay TSA workers if it is attached to a bill that funds ICE with no reforms. But that's what the Republicans have been doing. Democrats want to pay TSA workers ASAP with no strings attached. A yes vote would do that. That's the first time in this chamber we'll have an opportunity to vote yes or no on whether you want to pay TSA workers ASAP with no strings attached.
Meanwhile,
yeah, once you get past the check-in counter at this airport, all you can see is a sea of people waiting in these long TSA lines. There are massive crowds of people filling up these hallways. I have never seen anything like this here, as Hartsfield-Jackson has consistently been hit with these long lines almost every single day over the last week or so. So I'm going to have my photographer give our viewers a look at exactly what's going on here right now. People tell us they got here 3-4 hours before their flights, and it's all because TSA workers are not getting any money still, and many are reporting and not being able to pay for basics like gas, rent, and food. Nearly 400 of them nationwide have quit since the start of this shutdown. Over the last few days here in Atlanta alone, almost 40% of them are calling out each day, and this is leading to a lot of frustrated, confused, and tired travelers. Listen.
I feel bad, honestly, for just the TSA workers who are here. So we're just grateful that, we came early because we were prepared, but unfortunately, flight boards in like 30 minutes. So even though we got here early, hopefully we make it.
So we got to talk about what might be one of the most absurd political motivated stunts we've seen from Democrats in a long time. And that's saying something because the bar is already on the floor. Right now, Democrats are pushing us towards a Department of Homeland Security shutdown, and they're trying to sell this as some kind of principled stand over ICE funding. That's the headline. That's the talking point. That's what they want their base to believe. But when you actually peel back the layers, what you realize very quickly is that this has absolutely nothing to do with ICE funding and everything to do with political theater. And this is what I like to call peak Trump derangement syndrome behavior. It's not about policy. It's not about governance. It's not about keeping the country running. It's about signaling to the far left activist base that they are still the resistance, that they are still fighting Trump at every turn, no matter the cost. And yes, the cost in this case includes federal workers not getting paid, disruptions to national security infrastructure, and unnecessary chaos, all so they can score some cheap political points on behalf of illegal immigrants. Now, here's the part they don't want you to understand because it completely destroys their narrative. ICE is already funded. Let me say that again clearly for the people in the back so there's no confusion. ICE funding is not what's at stake here. There is nothing in this shutdown fight that suddenly eliminates ICE or scripts its funding. That's not how this works. So when Democrats go out there and pretend like they're taking a stand against ICE funding, what they're really doing is misleading the public, and they're banking on the fact that most people won't look into the details and they can just ride the emotional wave of their activist base instead of looking into the details. Meanwhile, real people, TSA agents, Department of Homeland Security employees, everyday workers are the ones who get caught in the crossfire of this manufactured crisis. And that's exactly why the situation has escalated to the point where you're now seeing counter moves from President Trump and even Elon Musk stepping into the conversation. Because if Democrats are going to play games with essential government functions, then the response is going to be just as strategic. President Trump is now saying, fine, if you don't want to properly fund Department of Homeland Security and keep things running as they should, then we'll adapt. We'll use ICE agents to step in and handle responsibility that TSA agents normally perform. Think about that for a second. That's how far this has gone. And then on top of that, you got Elon Musk coming in and saying he's willing to help cover the salaries of TSA workers during the shutdown, essentially stepping in where the government is failing because of political gamesmanship. That alone should tell you everything you need to know about how ridiculous this situation has become. So what we're watching unfold right now is not a serious policy debate. It's not a legitimate funding crisis. It's a calculated political stunt designed to energize a Pacific base, regardless of the consequences for the rest of the country. And the question you should be asking yourself is simple: who is this really helping? Because it's definitely not the American people. Hit the like button, share the video, subscribe to the channel, and I want you guys now to check this out.
This just in, President Trump posting on Truth Social, threatening to send ICE agents to U.S. airports if Democrats don't fund DHS. Marcus Espinoza, live from Newark Airport, who is watching it, all those long lines going off and on all day. How are things looking right now? Are people hearing about ICE agents possibly showing up at airports, Marcus?
Hey, Laura, yeah, we're hearing some murmurs there, but let's play this out. Let's visualize this, okay? Because behind me, we have a pretty decent line here at Terminal A. This is kind of ebbing and flowing throughout the day at Newark Liberty International Airport. Now picture ICE agents there, them doing security as the president claimed in that Truth Social post. Let's go ahead and bring that up as well there. Just a remarkable statement to make by the president here. Just a salvo from his side, almost calling the bluff of Democrats when he put this out, saying if the radical left Democrats don't immediately sign an agreement to let our country, in particular our airports, be free and safe again, I will move our brilliant and patriotic ICE agents to the airports, where they will do security like no one has ever seen before. A remarkable statement and remarkable update on the battle right now to fund DHS and get these TSA workers paid. So we had that developing moments ago. And then earlier this morning, Elon Musk chimed in on the matter. He posted to X that he wants to pay the salaries of TSA workers that have been without pay for over a month due to the partial government shutdown. It's still unclear if he's even allowed to do this or how it might work, but Musk has presented a solution to a problem that is set to.
Yeah, shout out to Elon Musk. Shout out to President Trump, because what you're seeing from them right now is something that honestly that's pretty rare in Washington. It's pretty rare, which is actually problem solving in response to a crisis that they didn't create. And you want me to be honest, family? I think this is actually working in regards of in Donald Trump's favor, because now we get to see a prelude of how ICE will work at the polling places with the SAVE Act to uphold election integrity if we can see things run smoothly in our airports, as a preview of that, right? Or how it would be and how smooth things would be. And also, this is also the Republican, it works in Republicans' favor for the stance of how ignorant the Democrats are being to basically risk national security and the safety of American people when it comes to aviation safety, and just let alone national security safety for making sure Americans are safe getting on board on a 30,000 weighted plane, or 30,000 feet into the air in a tube, right? In an airplane. It definitely shows they're willing to risk American lives in the air, being in a plane, who is just trying to travel safely and protecting our airports. And this entire situation exists because Democrats decided to play political games with Department of Homeland Security funding, and they even know it, right? They know it. And this isn't even me speculating anymore, because this comes right from their own side, because you have Axios, which is not exactly a conservative outlet, putting out reports where Democrats are basically admitting, yeah, people are getting hurt. Yeah, federal workers are missing paychecks. Yeah, this is causing real consequences, but they're doing it anyway. Why? Because this is about optics. This is about signaling to their base they are standing up to Trump and standing up for illegal immigrants, even if it means making everyday Americans collateral damage in the process. And now that reality is starting to set in, it's beginning to backfire, because people are not stupid. They can see what's happening. They can see that this is a manufactured crisis and that the Democrats are the ones dragging this out. And you can see the desperation starting to creep in with this so-called Hail Mary plan they're pushing now, because according to Axios, inside Dems now gambit to win the Department of Homeland Security shutdown fight, right? By funding. So the House Democrats are trying to end the Department of Homeland Security shutdown by funding every part of the agency except ICE and Customs and Border Protection. Think about how absurd that is. They want to fund TSA, FEMA, and the Coast Guard, all the visible politically safe parts of Department of Homeland Security, but carve out the one area that their far left base has demonized the most. And again, here's the kicker. They hope that you don't catch ICE is already funded. So this entire maneuver is symbolic. It's political theater. It's them trying to say, look, we are against ICE without actually changing the reality of ICE's or ICE funding, because they can't. At the same time, they're hoping this move will shift the blame onto Republicans because the optics right now are terrible for them. And you got federal workers missing paychecks, Department of Homeland Security warning about airport disruptions and potential closures, and regular Americans asking a very simple question: why is this even happening? Why is this happening? Even Democrats themselves are starting to admit that this strategy isn't working. You got lawmakers openly saying this shutdown isn't forcing any change from the White House. One Democrat literally said, in the meantime, we're making people hurt, and acknowledged that long airport lines are not exactly making them popular. That's an understatement. Another one basically admitted they're trying to have it both ways, claiming they're on the right side, quote unquote, right side when it comes to opposing ICE, but not wanting to take responsibility for everything else that falls apart because of this shutdown. Right. And then you got Hakeem Jeffries pushing his discharge petition, trying to force a vote to fund the rest of the Department of Homeland Security while excluding immigration enforcement, framing it as protecting federal workers. But again, if you actually look at the situation, honestly, the only reason those workers are in this position to begin with is because Democrats chose to tie this funding fight to a political agenda they knew wasn't going to go anywhere. Right. So when you read that, right, and I basically broke it down. When it comes to this whole article, you guys can check it out yourself. I wanted you guys to see the proof in the pudding here, right? So you guys see the article, as I said, over here on Axios. And when you look down, it says, between the lines, this plan would effectively end the Department of Homeland shutdown altogether. The White House has already been keeping ICE in CBP funded with more than $100 billion made available to the agencies in the One Big Beautiful Bill. Several Democrats told Axios that if the White House doesn't cough up what they deem adequate reforms to immigration enforcement policy, Democrats are content to simply wash their hands of any culpability in alleged ICE abusers or ICE abuses, alleged ICE abuses. As it says, quote unquote, as they are terrorizing people, we're not going to give them any more money, right? So that's where we're at, said one senior House Democrat, saying of the OBBB funds, spend it down. And what we're hearing, Jeffries and House Appropriations Committee ranking member Rosa DeLauro made the case for the discharge petition at a closed door Democratic caucus meeting Tuesday afternoon, according to lawmakers who were present, right? Jeffries argued that the plan doesn't give up any leverage, said one House Democrat. So I read all that to say, here's the bottom line. Democrats are slowly but surely folding. And you can see it in the messaging. You can see it in proposals. You can see it in the panic. You can see it how bad they are panicking. They understand now that they cannot stop ICE funding. That was never realistically on the table. This was always about trying to force the White House to concede on broader immigration enforcement policies, and that's not happening. So now they're scrambling and scraping to find a way out that doesn't make them look like they were the ones responsible for all this in the first place. But the problem is the media, even some parts of the mainstream liberal media, ain't that shocking? They're starting to catch on. They're starting to ask tougher questions. They're starting to point out that from an optics standpoint, this looks like a Democrat-led shutdown. And once that narrative sticks, it becomes a lot harder to spin. And this as anything other than what it actually is, a political stunt that went too far and is now blowing up in their faces. Check this out. Check this out, family. Sorry about that. Let me cue this up.
ICE is funded through the big tax bill for a while, so you're not affecting them with this, as you know. Yes, they may be refusing your deal on the table, but you started this. But for what the Democrats did, there is no shutdown.
Right. If we had simply funded everything exactly the way the Republicans wanted to, if we had given them their votes without having any say whatsoever in how it was funded, if we simply acted like we didn't exist and that our votes were irrelevant and did what they wanted to do and just basically voted like Republicans, sure. But we do have a responsibility to stand up for issues. And I agree with you, by the way, that part of the responsibility of that is to try to not do harm. And it's hard as you negotiate your way through that. But again, that's why we came up with this option. And let me also say, I do think this needs to be resolved. I do. I think the urgency is growing. I think we may have to accept
it's more dangerous now.
Yeah.
Follow me on X, follow me on YouTube. Maybe I will read your response during the course of the program. Retired Florida truck driver Frank. Aren't the Democrats openly talking about the pain they are causing the American people? There's your answer. My answer is I blame both of them. I do believe if you pushed me between one or the other, I would say it's the Democrats who have marginalized the TSA agents in this instance. And I think it's horrible the way in which they've been used, the TSA agents, as pawns. I flew twice this week and without incident. So it's not like I'm experiencing what they're experiencing in Atlanta and elsewhere. But I took a look at the dynamic. These are the people who are literally on the front line of protecting the country. Think Richard Reed, the shoe bomber. Number two, it's a very dank work environment. Would you do that job? Would you stand there for hours on end and that would be your employment? And three, they don't do it for much money. My so-called intern, Eric X, had the best idea. There ought to be a bucket at the front of every line right before you go through the conveyor belt. We all throw in a $5 and make sure that these people are covered and that they get to whack that up. Nobody would call in sick. Nobody. That would be such a great message for Washington, too. Like, you can keep screwing around. We, the American people, we're going to take care of these people. That's how it ought to end. And kudos to Elon Musk for being willing to write a check as well. I just think it's terrible and such a sign of our government dysfunction. Anyway, what's next?
Yeah, now you reach to the point where even CNN is starting to look at the situation and say, okay, hold on. This is starting to look like a Democrat shutdown. And when you lost CNN on the optics, you know you got a serious problem. I want to see Abby Phillip talk about this on the table with Scott Jennings, because what's becoming increasingly clear is that this isn't about governance. This isn't about compromise, and it's definitely not about public safety. This is about Democrats being willing to hurt people, disrupt essential services, and create instability, all for the sake of sticking it to Trump and signaling to the far left activist wing of their party that they're still in a fight. But here's the reality. They've overplayed their hand. Optically, this is a disaster. The longer this drags on, the more obvious it becomes to the average American that this is not some noble stand. This is a self-inflicted crisis. People are sitting in airports dealing with delays. Federal workers are missing paychecks, and Department of Homeland Security is warning about real security concerns. And for what? For a political fight that Democrats already know they cannot win? And that's where the constitutional and political reality comes into play. Immigration enforcement and border security are core functions of the federal government. This is not optional. This is not something you just get to turn on and turn off because it's politically inconvenient. The executive branch has both the authority and the responsibility to enforce immigration law, and Supreme Court precedent has consistently reinforced the federal government's role in that process. ICE and Customs and Border Protection are not going anywhere. They are already funded. They are already operating. And there is no scenario where the Trump administration is going to agree to gut enforcement just to satisfy a political demand. That's not negotiation. That's surrender. Now, Democrats will argue that their concerns are about humanitarian issues and reform. But even if you take that argument at face value, shutting down unrelated parts of DHS doesn't fix anything. It doesn't reform policy. It just creates chaos. And that's why even some Democrats are starting to admit that this strategy isn't working and it's actually making them look worse. So what you're watching is the slow collapse of a strategy that was never grounded in reality. They thought this would give them leverage, but instead it's turning into a political liability. And now they're looking for a way out without admitting they were wrong. So without further ado, let's get into the debate between Harry Sisson and News Nation host Katie Pavlich on the so-called Democrat shutdown.
across the country, everyday Americans are being hit with long airport lines, and they're long, as TSA officers call out while not being paid. Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy says all this chaos is only going to get worse.
This is going to look like child's play, what's happening right now. You're going to see small airports, I believe, shut down. You're going to see extensive lines, and air travel is going to almost come to a grid halt, stop.
Joining us now, Jason Rand, Seattle radio host, and Harry Sisson, Democratic commentator. Thank you both for being here. So, Jason, first to you. Democrats continue to refuse to fund the rest of Homeland Security, saying it's ICE that they are going after when ICE is funded through 2029. What gives?
Yeah, I mean, what their intent is to separate out ICE from DHS because they want to fully defund. That is their end goal, which is precisely why the Republicans are not going to allow that to move forward. And of course, there's no real interest in even negotiating. The Republicans have been trying to negotiate. I don't think that they should at this point, but they are trying to. And every single time they give something, you hear some Democrat come out and say, no, you're not going far enough. Well, what exactly do you want? They give off the entire list. So what they're doing here is not negotiating. They're holding the country hostage. And unfortunately, there are a lot of Americans who are both directly impacted from travel, but there are a lot of government workers who aren't getting a paycheck because Democrats don't want to pay them.
Harry, the goalposts, as Jason has said, have been moved a number of times on exactly what that Democrats are demanding for ICE or Homeland Security reforms. We could go through that list, but this is going to become a political issue as well. And is this good for Democrats? I mean, you have some Democrats saying this is not going to help us given how much pain people are in. And when you have airports threatening to shut down altogether, that's also an economic position that Democrats are putting the country in.
Well, I think the Democratic position here is actually the reasonable one. I mean, you're talking about TSA. Democrats have proposed 9 bills at this point to fund TSA, get these folks a paycheck. Republicans have rejected it every single time. You had Senator James Lankford, Senator Moreno earlier today objecting to a unanimous consent request by 2 different Democrats to fund exclusively TSA, FEMA, and other government agencies while they negotiate on ICE and immigration. And you're saying there's this long list of demands that Democrats just won't bend. It's been pretty consistent. We want body cameras on, masks off, warrants signed by judge for if you're going to enter a home, which are all very basic requests. And Republicans do not want to budge on these things.
That's not true.
Well,
Jason,
no, that's what Democrats want. We want warrants signed by a judge, and Republicans are saying we don't want that.
Yeah, Democrats want judicial warrants that make it impossible to deport anybody in this country.
That's not true.
The White House sent a letter last week that they were willing to expand body camera footage on agents unless it's for undercover purposes. They are not willing, and Republicans are not willing, to allow no masking, Jason, because they know that these ICE officers who are doing a brave job of going into communities and getting pedophiles, murderers, rapists illegally here in the country out, and yet you have Democrats continuing to shut down the government, refusing to pay American federal workers in order to keep illegal aliens here and to dox ICE agents. Isn't that what this is about, Jason?
Facts. Look, that was an amazing breakdown that Kate Pavlich, basically the host in the red suit, she broke it down, right? This is exactly what people need to hear because it cuts through all the noise. She was absolutely on point and you can see it in real time. Harry Sisson didn't even have a real response. And that's what happens when you're confronted with arguments that are grounded in reality instead of political spin. The key point she made about judicial warrants and the broader demands Democrats are pushing is exactly what I've been saying throughout the videos. Once you really understand what they're asking for, you can't unsee it. What Democrats are effectively trying to do here is create a system where deportation becomes nearly impossible. That's the end goal. They want layer after layer of process, endless appeals, additional legal hurdles, more bureaucratic obstacles, so that even when someone is in this country illegally and has no legal right to remain in the system so clogged and so restrictive that enforcement becomes meaningless in practice. And let's be honest, Republicans are never going to agree to that because at that point, you're not enforcing immigration law anymore. You are nullifying it. And that leads to a bigger question that nobody on the left even wants to answer honestly, which is why? Why are they going so hard to make it easier for people here illegally to stay? Why is that the priority? Because you don't see the same level of energy when it comes to American citizens. You just don't. When it comes to illegal immigration, suddenly it's all hands on deck. And this isn't nothing new. This has been a pattern for years from Biden era policies to now, right? Biden era policies to now. So when you connect the dots, right? Connect the dots. This isn't random. This is intentional when it comes from the Democrat Party.
Is that why over 70% of the people currently in detention don't have criminal charges?
I'll get back to you. Jason, go ahead.
You got it.
Yeah, so number one, that talking point is just not true. But number two, yes, this is intended to dox ICE agents. That's precisely what the left, the radical left, has been doing for a very long time against officers. Now, unfortunately, your average officer at a local agency doesn't have very many protections against this. And I'm glad that we do have at the federal level some willingness from leadership to say, yeah, we're not going to put our people in harm's way and then have them have to worry about their family members being doxxed by radicals who are upset that they are going after criminal illegal immigrants.
Harry, want to respond? You're jumping in there. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. Is that, I mean, you know, Republicans are firm that ICE are going after only the bad guys. Is that why over 70% of people currently in detention have no criminal convictions on their record? And might I add, Donald Trump is starting to disagree with you both. We have reporting from the Wall Street Journal today that Donald Trump has privately told his advisors that these mass deportation policies have gone too far. The White House told Republicans in Congress to stop talking about mass deportations because it's hurting them in the polls. Just look, guys, you don't have to believe me. You can think I'm a crazy liberal. Look at the numbers. The Donald Trump administration has gone down on one of his key issues, immigration. He is underwater. He went from that being one of the key issues that helped him win in 2024 to now saying, let's not talk about it anymore. So you guys can think that Democrats are radical for wanting accountability and body cams and most purposes and judicial warrants and things like that. And
Republicans have agreed
policy,
to the body
but
cam.
you guys are on the 20% side. We're on the 80% issue. So if you want to run with this,
but you're not on the 80% side because you're supporting policies.
Final thought.
Go ahead.
Yeah, the policies that Democrats unfortunately are supporting right now is to defund the entire apparatus. They want open borders. We experienced that for 4 years.
It's not true.
Oh, excuse me, 3 years under Joe Biden until he realized that it was hurting him politically and he decided to do what he could have done the entire time, letting people into this country illegally to commit crimes.
That's not true.
And take
You
the
don't have to
lives
lie
of
about
American
this.
citizens. It's 100% true.
No,
yeah,
wait, you don't have to lie about this.
Right? She
Harry,
wasn't killed by an illegal immigrant.
Let him talk
You don't have
and
to
then
lie
you can
about this.
respond. Harry,
I mean,
let's not talk over each other. People can't hear you when you do that. So let
Please
Jason
go
finish
ahead.
his point, and then we'll move on.
Please go ahead.
Well, I'm curious what the lie is. We didn't have open borders and people didn't come into this country illegally and commit crimes and murder American citizens. That's made up.
Tell me what Joe Biden did to open the border.
We could show
He didn't
the
do
photos.
anything to close the border.
Please.
Wow.
Wait.
Okay.
Family, did this guy just ask the question that Kate Pavlich answered in the beginning? And didn't I mention earlier in this video about the Biden administration opening up the borders? So why did he ask this question?
The opposite of what Donald Trump has done, which is why we're at record lows. I mean, this
neither of you answered the question. Name the policy.
We have to go.
Of course,
but we would love to have you both.
Why did he ask this question? I'm trying to figure this out.
Name the policy.
We have to go.
Name the policy. Neither of you answered the question. Name the policy. Open the border. Name the policy.
The border was completely
closed the border.
To open the border.
We didn't have open borders and people didn't come into this country illegally and commit crimes and murder American citizens. That's made up.
Tell me what Joe Biden did to open the border.
No, he didn't. That was a slap in the face of reality right there. That was a slap in the face deserved. Okay.
We could show the photos.
He didn't do anything to close the border.
Please.
Wow.
Wait. Just a quick answer. What did Joe Biden do to open the border? Name
the
the policy.
border was completely
The literal
open.
opposite. Here's the answer. The opposite of what Donald Trump has done, which is why we're at record.
Name a policy. I don't think this guy get it, Harry Sisson. Of course, the idea, why would they sit there and tell you something that's so treasonous and so anti-American in regards, you think they're going to tell you, oh, we are helping illegals to gain our voter base and to stay in control and to stay in power. We are helping illegals by coming to this country illegally. They're not going to do a policy. They're just going to do it behind the scenes. But see, what happened was it was exposed in New York under former Mayor Eric Adams, who ended up exposing that the Biden administration actually forced him to shut up and take the illegals and to house them in New York hotels and prisons, and police stations and so forth, and schools. So the very thing is, it's mind blowing to me. So why would someone tell you that they legally Why would someone outwardly tell you directly what they're doing illegally when the whole thing is doing it behind the scenes and not making it a big deal, so it may not seem as though they're not doing it? So why would they put in writing something they're doing that's sneakily to keep them in power, trying to basically not deceive the American people by not letting them feel deceived? Because if it was a policy, it would be American people would see the truth right then and there. See, it had to get exposed eventually because somebody eventually had to say something. And the proof was in the pudding because they mentioned already that Biden tried to cover his tracks and basically close the border. And it was already proof that with the pieces that Trump was using to build the wall, the Biden administration was selling it off, right? So when you look at all of this thing, right, of course, and let's be real how we got here. Biden came into office and immediately started dismantling Trump's border policies. Day one. That's not an opinion. That's a fact. He repealed executive orders, got rid of remain in Mexico, expanded parole, and removed the very policies that has discouraged people from coming here illegally. And what happened? Exactly what anyone with common sense expected. More illegal immigration, because when you remove consequences, you get more of the behavior. It's that simple. So what we're seeing right now from Democrats is just a continuation of that same philosophy: weaken enforcement, create obstacles, and to pretend like the consequences are unpredictable. And going back to this debate right here, this is why someone like Harry Sisson falls apart under pressure. There's no substance there. Meanwhile, you got people actually laying out facts, and it exposes everything. And that's why he had a big slap in the face as Harry Sisson was basically getting exposed with the facts. So when you see all of that, right? Honestly, if CNN wanted to improve overnight, they'll start putting more voices on air like Kate Pavlich, because people are tired of the same narratives. But bigger picture, this whole situation is about more than just a shutdown. It's about the direction of the country, the rule of law, and whether immigration policy is going to prioritize American citizens or not. And that's what this comes down to. So the real question is whether people are going to keep tolerating this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe and turn your post notifications on so you don't miss the next video. Peace.